From Rule 62 Studios in Bossier City, Louisiana, this is The Grouch and the Brainstorm. Welcome back. Episode 82. And today, Jill and Matt sit down with a special guest and let them tell their story. So I'm going to let them two take it away. Go ahead, guys.
All right, it's September. It is National Recovery Month, and Jill and I are sitting down with a friend of ours that's going to give us a little bit of her story today, and I'm going to let Jill introduce her.
Absolutely. This is my friend, Carin C, and we are actually sponsor sisters, and I am very, very grateful for that and grateful to have her in my life. But yeah, I wanted her to stop by and share her story with us because it's a good one. Carin?
Thank you, Jill. So, hi. So, my name is Carin Cannon. So, Jill said C. I'm saying Cannon. So, anyway, I have a sobriety date of February the 20th of 2019. So, with that being said, that's not my first sobriety date. So, anyway, actually, I was born in a small town, Sabine Parish, born and raised, graduated from Maney High School to a single mom. That really wasn't present because for her, she had to work like 2 to 3 jobs to make sure that we stayed in the middle class family. So with that being said, I had 2 older brothers. My daddy was not present. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. So anyway, with that being said, she worked, I went to school, graduated. So probably around the age of 15, I started drinking. And so, and it was like just a weekend thing at the age of 15. We was just drinking beer, getting drunk, but I should have noticed something then because I wasn't just drinking. I was actually getting so intoxicated, passing out, and it was no just sipping. It was like I was going to do it to the fullest level. So with that, I went on. So I'm going to just skip on up to, because I was in active addiction for 19 years, actually. So at the age of 21, we started bar hopping, going to the clubs. And so I have a friend that comes and said, hey, if you'll do this, it'll make you drink longer and you'll be able to, and I was like, okay.
Yeah,
so anyway,
that one too.
Yeah. So anyway, so I did it. And so it was methamphetamines. And so here I am off to the race. I was like, oh, hell yeah. So I actually stopped drinking when I got on meth. Yeah. I actually stopped. And there's a story in the big book that talks about like,
you're telling my story.
Yeah. For 10 years, I quit drinking. Like
look at me.
Yeah.
Look
right.
At what I'm doing.
Well, I was under the, why would I drink? I have drugs now.
Yeah, I don't need it no more. Like, it didn't do nothing for me. So anyway, so with that being said, so was in a relationship, never really wanted no kids, was told I couldn't have any. At the age of 26, I found out that I was pregnant with my first child. I really wouldn't have said that I was addicted, that it was just, because back then it was like the old school stuff. It's not like the stuff that's on the street.
Right.
So, right. Yeah. So it was like a weekend. It was just that's all you could do it. And so, but I did quit doing drugs while I was pregnant, and I wound up having a beautiful girl, baby girl. And so, but it wasn't long after that because when I got pregnant, I only weighed 125 pounds. And when I had her, I was 217. So that was always one of the justifications of me doing drugs was to maintain my weight, more energy. And so, I said, well, I'll go get on some Adipex. I won't start doing drugs again, but I'll go get on this, go to the weight doctor and I'll get on some Adipex.
So was this back in the days you drove to Texas?
Yes, it sure is. Hemp Hill. Yes, most definitely. Famous Hemp Hill. So I drove over to Hemp Hill and I got on Adipex, and it wasn't probably within the first week. And then I was back to, doing drugs. But it wasn't just back and then when you did methamphetamines, it was seasonal. Like it wasn't all year long. It was, wintertime is when you got the mess. Summertime, it really wasn't made. So, anyway, let's just say I liked a buffet. So when it was wintertime, it was meth. When it was summertime, just whatever we could do to change the way we feel.
Absolutely.
And so, then 5 years later after that, let's just say, Michaela, me and her daddy had been together for 8 years. We split up. because of my drug use, and he wanted to raise the kids and be a good father that he was. And I wanted just to get butt wild. And so I never worked because I didn't have to, because he took care of everything. And so here I am, us splitting up, having to get a job. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Just, no education really, just, so I went to school and become a CNA, and I got my CNA license.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, let's just say I didn't really keep them that long or use them that long because of my addiction. But after we split, I got into another relationship with somebody. And so this relationship was like total hell. So this relationship was really, really abusive. And I was like, holy crap, what have I ever done to deserve anything like this? Who does this to somebody? And so I used to be a huge advocate, and still am a huge advocate of women that stay in a relationship like that. But I can have empathy and sympathy for them because I've been there, and I know how hard it is to get out of an abusive relationship.
Same here.
Yep. And so I had him. So I had a little beautiful boy. Needless to say, when I went into my doctor to do aerial, I kind of told him, "Hey, look, I might be a drug addict. Really not saying I am, but I might be a drug addict. Not really an alcoholic.
Dabble a little bit.
Just dabble a little bit. And he said, "Well, we can't use drugs." And I was like, "Yeah, I know that." So I would crave Coronas. Oh, yeah, girl, I craved Coronas. Well, when your doctor tells you can drink a couple and it won't hurt the baby, well, I don't know what a couple is.
Couple hundred.
Yeah, right. So anyway, here I am pregnant. And, a few times I'm going to drink a little bit too many Coronas. But that was all I really done with Ariel, thank God, And so with that being said, I just went on. And so still nothing, still not wanting to change my life. This was how it was. I had got into some friendships with some people that really was hustlers and did a lot because, like I said, I didn't have a job, so I can sell. So I got in with some bigger people, and I could flip a lot of drugs for them, and that's how I supported my habit. Was by selling drugs. I just got to share this. I lived on a property that was actually a cop, and he was actually kin to me, and I'm not going to say his name because he probably still holy crap. And so he used to tell me, "Don't you be coming down here, I'm living on this property. Don't you be selling no drugs." And I said, "No, I'll take it across the road." And he's just looking at me like, "I'm going to get you, Karen. I'm going to get you, because everybody knew what I was doing. It was like that little town. It was no secret. With these new group of friends, we had went to Texas, and coming back from Texas, we was splitting up everything. And so anyway, so I was watching them. And so they were doing being a junkie. They were doing, shooting up. And I was like, "Oh my God, what are y'all doing?" And I was like, "Oh my God," I said, "that looks so fun." And they were like, "No, Karen, no." And I was like, "No, I tell you, just one time," they said, "You'll never smoke again." And I said, "Man, y'all, that's for weak-minded people." I said, "I don't let the dope do me. I do the dope." And they're like, "Okay, all right." So anyway, so I convinced them into doing me. And needless to say, I never smoked again.
Yeah. That
was just there it goes. So I was productive because that was in 2012. And let's say 2006, I'm sorry. So around 2006, Michaela's daddy had come to me and he said, this is not happening. And I was, "What?" Well, it had done got out around our little town that I was shooting up drugs. And so he said, "No, not my baby's mama. My baby's mama is not going to be a junkie. I'll be damned." And so he was really, really pissed at me doing that. And, I don't blame him. Here I am taking care of your head, and I'm turning into a junkie. And it was something that I would always say I would never do. Oh, I would never go stoop as low as her, judging people on how they did their drugs. And then here I am doing exactly what they were doing.
Yep.
With that being said, I'll never forget. It was, actually, it was in 2006. I got a phone call that night. We had started talking because I told him I wasn't doing it no more, but it was kind of like my higher power was working out things because he knew that I wouldn't be able to do what I was to maintain. I don't know how to explain it, but I got a phone call at 3:00 in the morning. I had picked up a friend because I was paranoid that my last relationship had got out of jail, and I was scared he was going to come and try to hurt me. So I always had somebody with me, always. And so we was there, and I got a phone call that night, and it was Clay's mom, and she was screaming and saying, "I need you to come, and I need you to bring my baby." And I just automatically at this time just knew that something had happened. And so anyway, so that night we lost Clay. They had gotten into a car wreck. He was going back to work. He worked for Gray Wolf. And his friend was with him, and his friend had been drinking and staying up. He had another guy in the front seat with him. And so anyway, we lost 2 lives. The guy that was driving, he did not even scratch. And so that didn't help me any. So it's just not wanting to do life no more. I was at the point that I just did not want to do life. I didn't want to check the mail. I would take a bath and then they would have to kick in the door because I would drown from being up so long. I think they did that like 3 times. I just didn't want to live. It was just over. I never in a million years thought that I would lose somebody like him, you know? And so, after that happened, probably about the next 2 years, I wound up running into somebody else. And so, and he was just, so I didn't inherit anything. My oldest daughter inherited everything because she was the only child. So I'm just heir over all her stuff. So he had a home that he had just bought for them. Mm-hmm. So they're telling us like, we have to move in this house. And so I'm like, oh my God, I'm not ready. And so I would remember going to my mom and saying, I'm going crazy. Like, I think I need to go to Brentwood. Like I wasn't ready for this, like, you know, and, anyway, so I ran into somebody else. And so when I met him, I was like, holy shit. Oh my God. Everything I did wrong with Clay, from everything crazy that I did, I can make it up through this person. Like he reminds me so much of Clay. But needless to say, when we got high together, it was like I had 2 in 1. So now I have Ariel's daddy and Clay in this one person. Because that's how we would get. We would get so violent and in the domestic violence, and you know, and he did the same thing I did, and we was both just absolutely crazy. So it was around this time. We had been together almost 3 years when I wound up getting pregnant again.
Okay.
And so this is my almost last kid, not my last kid yet, but, and so I went to the doctor, and so he already knew that I was an addict, and I was not an alcoholic. I was just an addict. And so anyway, the only thing is with this one, and so I'm just going to be honest here, because a lot of people don't want to be honest about their kids and their things because they have so much guilt about it, and it's part of my story.
Yeah.
And so he knows my story. He's heard my testimony. He's looked at me, but it also just shows him how powerful the addiction was on mom, because he knew, like, now he knows mom wouldn't do that, you know, but mom's sober. So no, mom wouldn't, you know? So anyway, I used with Jack. Mm-hmm. I just decided I would just use cocaine because it comes from the earth and it's not that harmful as what's underneath the bathroom sink. That's how I justified it in my mind. Sure. Is that it's not that bad, you know. Come to Shreveport one day because my doctor was, well, it's not. So come to Shreveport one day. I had used the day before. My blood pressure was at stroking level, went straight into the emergency room. And so here they are having to fast deliver Jack.
Yeah.
And he came out 3 pounds, and he was perfectly healthy today. Beautiful, just a handsome, tall man. Just so proud of him. But the doctor really did a lot for me that day, because my doctor knew that I had used, and he knew that's what put me into labor. Yeah. You know, and if he could have turned me in, and I could have had all this OCS, which I hear in stories about the women with their kids, and the OCS is all in. And thank God I didn't have none of that. That's not my story. I thank God I had grandparents that was in all mine. You know, that's in, you know, sometimes that might be a little bit worse than OCS when you have all these grandparents wanting your kids, but it wasn't, you know. Mm-hmm. And with that, so I was supposed to get fixed when I got pregnant with Jack. Like they were gonna, like, my doctor said, we're done, no more. Like, yeah, but I couldn't, just due to the fact that my blood pressure and all this. So he's in ICU and mom's home getting high. That's how that went for 6 months. Yeah. And, you know, and that's just the truth. It was an even probably another 9 months, and here I am back in there, and I said, oh my God, Dr. James, I think I'm pregnant. And sure enough, I was. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, so I call her the child that God knew I needed. And so she's my golden child, because like she wasn't planned. She wasn't even supposed to be here, but she's my sidekick. And so anyway, sure enough, I had a beautiful girl. Did not use. The dad was gone. He was in treatment, and it was a perfect pregnancy, like just perfect, you know. And then that's after Cooley got born is when my criminal record started like swirling. Like, I had a bad habit of I liked old house places. A lot of people do. But I thought it was neat. And so I would take pictures. And so I had these golden rules that if the yard was mowed or the lights was on, then I'm not to go because somebody loves the property. And there was a lot of them that you would be like, today, if I look, I'll be like, holy crap, I went in there with them rats infested. Oh my God, who would do that? And so I called a charge. Well, it was like a big write up in Sabine Parish, and all these houses that were getting broke into, they tried to pin it all on me. And I was like, what? So they kind of just opened up this whole warehouse at the jailhouse and just told anybody to come in. And if they found a piece of property and it was theirs, then I did it. And I was like, what? And so needless to say, nobody claimed nothing because it was nobody's property, so, but I got simple burglary. And I called a huge charge in behind it. So that's my first charge ever. So I didn't kind of know the law then as I do today because I've been in there so much, but I didn't know that if you get in trouble within that time, then you don't get nothing expunged, and it's kind of double. So I had said, well, I'm going to go to treatment. So matter of fact, the judge, which I love him, Judge Beasley from Sabine Parish. He is just GOAT.
Yeah, I've worked with him.
Oh my God, I love him. He is just, there's a song and it says something about sitting on the throne. And that's just him, because I know that God used him to get me to where I am today.
He has done a lot for Sabine Parish.
Girl, yes, but he had compassion. But I remember one time I went in there and he said, you don't breathe because your breath is a waste of good air. And I'm looking at him and go, what? Yeah. He's like, don't breathe. And so his secretary's sitting there looking at me going, don't breathe. Please, God, don't breathe. Like you're about to go to jail. And he had been dealing with me since 2006 because my mom tried to have me committed. We had been going through there, and I was still, I'm not a drug addict,
Mm-hmm.
And so finally he just said, look, this is what you're going to do. So the first treatment actually he sent me was to Pines Treatment Center. And I was there, shut it down, state shut it down. I was there shutting it down with the state. I was like, I don't want to go home because I was in so much fear of going home. And matter of fact, my daughter, my Corley, the last one, she actually came and took her first steps and walked to me while I was in treatment.
Oh.
I know. I'm like, oh my God. And so anyway, but even none of that, and that's sad to say in our addiction, the kids can't stop you. Nobody can stop you. It's just that powerful. And once you unleash it, it's over, And I went home and it wasn't even 2 days later and I'm right back doing the same exact thing that I did. So a bunch of people went to the house. I said, well, I need to go pick up this here. And it was kind of fishy about how I picked it up because I was like, no, dude, I don't do it like this.
That's not what we talked about.
Yeah, that's not this is kind of why is all this not in one? And he's looking at me and sure enough, when I leave, we're in a truck and it's 3 people in the front seat and they pull us over and I said, for what? And they said, it's 3 people in the front seat. I said, it's a truck. And it's on. I had a bunch of it. And so I was sitting there. And so I was like, y'all are not touching me. It was 13 Sheriff's Department, Manny PD, all over there. I was like, what are they doing? And I'm filming them because that's how crazy I am, oh my God. And I still have it on my phone. I kept that old flip phone, razor phone.
No.
Yeah. I still got it. I'm like, you were insanity. What was you doing?
Yes.
And a woman came in, and so I had been holding Corley, and automatically something had told me to call and say, hey, somebody, because I had my kids, she was in the back seat. So there was 3 in the front, and then I had my baby. So I got, child endangerment, of course, because you had your kid, but who thinks about having their, I wasn't thinking about none of that. So my mom and them came and got Corley automatically.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the woman lifted up my bra, to pat me down, I watched back, boom, boom, boom.
And you're just like,
and I was getting my foot, and I was just slowly, just barely, because we was on gravel, and I was like, oh my gosh. So I was just slowly just rubbing it into the gravel, and that one bag stuck. Just one bag. It wasn't even a half of a gram, and I got busted. And I used to be one of them, oh, yeah, man, y'all get busted with a gram. What's wrong with y'all? And here I was, everything that I had said to other, here I was doing.
So they didn't see the ones that dropped?
No, did
wow.
not. Did not see nothing, because by the time I had them held up, it was nighttime. So, yeah, and she wasn't happy that she had to come out there because they had to call her in to come search me.
To search you,
yeah. Because I was throwing a fit. And so it was the cop that arrested us. Anyway, I love him today, and he's super proud of me. But I was his first arrest ever. He had just got on the task force. And so anyway, they about to tell me that, you're about to catch a lot of charges because my mouth wouldn't shut up. They even put my baby's daddy in the car with me and said, shut her up. And he couldn't shut me up. And I was thinking, why? Isn't this, he ain't supposed to be in the car with me.
And meanwhile, you're filming and like,
Right.
I'm going to show you guys.
Yeah. Watch this. And so, sure enough, I went to jail. And so this time it wasn't no doors opening. Like it wasn't like I knew that it was over.
Mhm.
Like I knew once they shut that it was over. And it was. My sweet Judge Beasley made me sit. So I sat for a good while in jail. I would mark down the days after I, call and say, Mom, you can get me out. You could take da money and you can get it, And she's like, no, I'm not, And so I wrote everybody, because it's a small town, everybody. So I wrote from Judge Beasley to the DA to the probation officer, everybody like, let me out, no response. So anyway, we have 9 people in the bull. It was bullpen 2. They had 9 people. We had people laying on the floor. Like that's how packed it was. And so in Sabine Parish, you don't get to go out and get exercise. Like they open up the doors and you can mingle across the hall to the other cell. Like, really? Like,
yeah, that's how it is in the ladies' prison that I work at.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, and then how they hand us our trays. I was like, oh my God, I feel like I want to bark or something. Like, boop, boop,
When I
boop.
was in rehab, the one I was in, our recreation was smoking cigarettes. That's what we did. That was considered a physical activity.
Wow.
So anyway,
Y'all could smoke?
yes.
No, they gave us patches.
Mm.
Well, they said something about a vape or something, but it has to be bought from the whatever
Oh, yeah, from them.
It's gel puffs.
Yeah, from the store. You can go to on your commissary, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. I know this all so well.
Yeah, Jill. and so in 2000, so this would have been July the 17th of 2000 July the 17th of 2012 is my first sobriety date. That's the day that God did for me what I could not have done for myself. And so I was court ordered to go to CADA, and then I was court ordered to go live at Oakwood Homeless for Women. And I said, I'll do whatever you want, just door two, just let me out of here. And so I didn't know that on the papers it was actually that I was not to return to Sabine Parish until I was off probation for 5 years, and I had to stay at Oakwood for a year. I was like, oh, great. Yeah. I almost got kicked out like 3 times. Just 3. I was like, but they would have to so our director then was Gwen, because I know you did it. And so, and Gwen would just look at me and she'd say, do you want to go to jail? Because I'm going to call Sabine Parish. I'll be like, oh, how dare you? And everybody say, why are you so mean to her? And she said, because she needs to know she's going to jail.
Yeah.
So if I failed any of that, I was going to have to do 10 years flat. I mean, that was I was like, oh my God. And like I said, I almost got kicked out 3 times. I was like, can I tell you what I did? I broke a rule.
You talk about being a goat, though, man. You get kicked out of a parish and they tell you just don't come back. That's pretty much goat material right there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Most definitely.
that's
Yeah.
pretty awesome.
Yeah. And then even had to call and say, hey, can I go to Sabine Parish? And then so it would be monitored through the probation officer in Shreveport. And I was like, oh, this is do not go unless they know you're going, because you will go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I did it. And, this criminal here started getting good jobs. I worked at the Providence House, the home with, it was kind of cool because for me, it was an eye opener, because I always thought there was just one addiction, it was just, and that's not true. The people in the homeless house, when I worked for them, they're not just there because it might have been 20% out of 80 that was there because of drugs. And the rest was just couldn't they pay their bills, family problems, and just became homeless, and they have their children. And so Cooley would donate her clothes, and it would be so sweet because I'd watch these little girls walk up and down. I'd be like, oh, I miss my baby. Cause I can't go back to Sabine Parish, they would have to come see me. So I'm away from my kids the whole time too while I'm doing this. I'm getting to see them on weekends, but I'm not with them. Somebody else is taking care of them, and which is grandparents. And I'm so blessed that I'm very blessed that grandparents took it, and they were in a good place. And I can see where they needed to be. Cooley kept my mom on her toes. Jack and them kept his. I can see where everybody was used, where they were getting used, in the grandparents. And so, and then I went to work for LACG, which is Louisiana Compulsive Gambling. And so I was and so I would ask them every time they come. They say they spent this much money. I said, was you on dope? And they would look at me and say, no. I said, did you drink? And they say, no. I said, oh my God, why would you do it then? Like who goes and loses that kind of money? Because at this time we have to wear masks. So I was kind of happy because when some of them would tell me how much money I literally wanted to have a heart attack. I said, what? Like, oh my, you could have bought 5 or 6 homes. What are you doing? You know? And they would say, no, it was the sound of the machines. Just that delusional thinking that I'm going to win my money back. And I was like,
it's actually physically addicting. A lot of people don't know that gambling is.
Well, I only did it when I was high. That's just because I didn't have nothing else to do.
Oh, well, and free drinks.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
I know a few people that I've talked to about that, and that is probably the way they've described it. And some of them are dual. They've had alcohol or drug things too, and they're like, the worst was the gambling. Like they said, I got over the alcohol. It was easier than the gambling part, and it was a physical addiction. The way they described it to me, I'm just going by what they've told me. But
But, and then a lot of people, though, some of the women, like they were older, and I'd be like, they would get bored.
Retire.
Husband died. One little school teacher, her husband had died. She had nothing to do. So she would go to mingle at the casinos. And then, and then she'd lose all her retirement or all this. And it just, that part would break my heart. I mean, yes, it's recoverable, but you probably would never mentally think about like, oh my God, because I don't think about how much money I lost using drugs. Like, I mean, and they think about it because they have a number with theirs. I don't have a number with mine, even though I got told to do a number thing.
Oh, I did it.
Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah.
But the guy told me about the gambling. What he told me, he said, you guys, the drug people, y'all use your money and you might ruin your credit and all that. He said, but with gambling, you're borrowing other people's stuff and you're other family members, and you're ruining credit and financial stuff for so many people.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I never even thought of that, but
yeah, because that'd be like, Mama, hey, will you co-sign for this? She's not even know what she's
or
co-signing.
just having this guy had older parents and he was taking all their stuff, and basically using it to gamble with. And, so they went from retired to broke. So,
yeah, that's sad. But it opened up my eyes to that. It's just not more than just me, because I was, and so, well, anyway, so I got an early release. And so I really everybody in Shreveport kind of already knew my community, my peeps that kind of knew that I hadn't really fixed up my little apartment, because when I moved out of Oakwood, I moved like a block away because I was so scared because I didn't know nobody. I'm not from here, but I had formed a relationship with all these women that came into Oakwood, and, and that was my support group, and these beautiful women that was loving me when I couldn't even love myself. So I like to say that, how when your grandma makes a quilt, she does some double stitches and double knots in it. And so if you got an old grandma's quilt, you can't really tear that. That thing is wool together, and that's how I was when I got there. I was so ripped, and all these women just started putting me back together, just sewing me back up. I got a beautiful sponsor that I've had since 2012. And just started working these steps and getting that trash out of everything I did. Forgiveness, like I said, I didn't. So I go back to my dad. So let's talk about dad for a minute. So I go back to dad. And so I didn't know as a child that my dad had an addiction too. He just, because my mom didn't drink or use drugs. My dad didn't drink or use drugs. But my dad liked women, lots of them, and that's an addiction too.
Oh,
and
yes.
so I was
Absolutely.
and so, that's why him and mom got divorced, just because, of him cheating and so his wife, he left her 2 or 3 times for it. And so I was like, oh my God, so he would find comfort in women to make him feel good, when I would find comfort in drugs and alcohol to change the way I feel too. And so I was like, so anyway, so me and dad got to repair our relationship, and so anyways, to understand that I had to accept him for who he was, and that was my dad, and that was Mason. And that's just who he was. And that was one of the biggest things that I heard was, you have to accept him for who he is. And that's who he is. And I was like, oh my God. And once I heard that, I was like, okay, I got this. I can do that, and I did. And so we got to make amends. But also, so when I got an early release, I decided I was going to go home. And so I'm going home. I'm getting the baby's dad back. I'm getting my kids back. And this is what I'm going to do, because I still had a home because my other daughter wasn't of age yet. And so anyway, so here I go, shot out, went back, went to work. So I went to work at a church I was a secretary, and they had a program of recovery there too. And so I would do the men's work, like where they would work to make money at that day in their treatment plan. And so, and I stayed sober. You know, I stepped out of church, but I'm gonna tell you what I stopped doing. I stopped calling my sponsor.
Okay.
I stopped going to meetings, and most definitely didn't reach out to nobody else, because I said, I'm just going to do me and God. Like this should be enough. Like, I've heard all these stories. You go to this little meeting in my hometown, and it's 5 people. They've been there for 20 years, and they say the same thing. I don't need that no more. But that didn't work for me, because it wasn't long. It was, matter of fact, I could tell you, it was July the 4th of 2017. We're on Toledo Bend in the boat, and somebody looks at me and said, "You want a drink?" And I said, a drink. I said, what? I said, and then I said it the first time I've ever said it. I said, I'm alcoholic. And they said, one won't hurt you. I said, yeah, you're right. One won't hurt me. That was it. Where I stopped drinking all them years, I picked up, and it was just 10 times worse, you know? And so just even like the next day, I am driving 20 miles to go get 2 or 3 cases of beer, because I was a beer drinker, because, you know, I couldn't do nothing hard because of everything else I've done. So I had, you know, I can't think of the word, but anyway, so I would have just drink beer. And so anyway, because I didn't want nobody to know. But let me tell you, so my brother is one of us. And so he owns a bar. You was talking a while ago, and it made me think. And so I said, how do you do it? How do you sit in here? And he said, because if I'm around it, I don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, are you serious? But I would go to his bar, and I say, hey, you have a Michelob Ultra Lime? And he looked at me and go, Carin. I said, just one. And he said, all right. So when I got there drinking him out, he wouldn't get no more. I was just like, but that's how he does it.
I have a friend in Mississippi that's been sober 20 something years, and he was a bartender before he got sober, and he's a bartender now, and he has been for 20 something years. And I said, how do you do that? And he goes, well, I did it before I got sober. It's just a job, you know, and it worked for him. He's a great guy that has no issues, you know, but I don't know that would be the one for me.
Yeah, I don't think that would be the one for me.
But
either.
I think he said the same thing your brother's saying is, once you see drunks all night, you're like, I don't want to deal with that. You don't want it.
Yeah,
I don't want to smell that smell.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah. Oh, God.
And so, but after that, it wasn't long, and I'm right back doing the same thing, selling, doing right back to where I was. I OD'd and almost died the first time I decided I was going to do a little meth. And so I have no friends down there, because I didn't hang around with anybody. So anything I did was really on a down low. And so I had to call my oldest daughter, and I was like, hey, they're here. I think I'm about to go to jail. Like, I was really, really high, and I was tripping really, really hard. And so, and now I think back, like, I didn't have nobody. And when she came and she saw me, I said, Michaela, the cops have been here. She said, Mom, they ain't been here. I said, yeah. So I
was just about to ask, were they really there?
No,
Okay.
girl, no. I had literally like OD'd, and when I come out of it, I was just, and I don't even know how,
psychosis.
yeah, I don't even know how long I'd been there. Like, I still today cannot know how long I had been locked up in that house.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, and she just looked at me, and she just started crying. I mean, you know, and just like, Mom. And she even called, and she said, hey, have y'all been on this? And she named the road, and the cops said no. And she was like, okay. She said, Mom, they haven't been here. I was like, oh yeah, they have. But they hadn't, you know. I was just really, really tripping. And so after that, she just came, and so I'm right back. And so she just came one day, and she said, you gotta go. I said, what? By this time she got married, and I was present there, and her not knowing how bad, because I was already still in my addiction. I just hadn't really bad. And she said, you've got to go. And I said, where am I going? She said, anywhere but here. She said, because I'm 21 now, and this is my dad's, and you're not going to mind. I'm not coming out here and finding you dead out here. You've got to go. And that was the best thing. She said, you were so toxic for me.
Wow.
Yeah. And so this is my first grandson, and I'm like, what? So, and she said, if you come to the hospital, I'm going to have you removed. Like, I'm done with you. And it was the best thing ever for me. You know what I'm saying? Because now I'm having to move back in with my mom. So anyway, so my mom's up all night watching to see what I'm doing. And it's just chaos, and just all the drama, and just psycho with it, you know? And so here we go again. And so I got arrested again. This time I got arrested. So it was actually April the 19th, 2020. And so going down the road, me and kid's daddy tied up fighting. Somebody seen us, called 911, and here's the cops. And so I was like, but I'd done called Monica, my sponsor. Anyway, I done called her and done said, like, hey, I need help. Will you go? I'm going to Brentwood, never show up, and it would be one of them things because I didn't need her because for 2 years, that's how long I stayed out that time was 2 years. And so, when the cops put me in, I was like, he said, do you have anything on you? And I was like, no. He said, Carin, I know you. We've been friends a long time, girl. We was raised up. You got to give it to me. And I was like, okay. He said, if you get in that car, it's double charge. I said, here, you can have it. And so sure enough, I got in the car and then there wasn't a door 1 or door 2 the second time with me. Mm-hmm. It was just like, I'm going back. I'm going back to the city. I'm going back to my peeps and I'm getting sober. And this is what I'm doing. And that's what I done. I called my sponsor. She said, do it. I'll walk you through it. And so sure enough, I called and I said, hey, so when they did call from Cato to tell me that my bed was ready, I said, oh, I can't come right now. Can I come tomorrow? And so they had sent somebody from Shreveport to pick me up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they sent them to pick me up. They didn't even have door handles in the back. I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm in a car, like y'all taking me to jail or something. Oh, it was terrible. They told them not to let me out of the car. And so, and here I went, and it was the best thing. That's where I got to meet beautiful Jill at, I'm just going to say, cause she was my counselor and a lot of therapy. And I can still remember our groups to this day, of us doing it. And yeah. I mean, most definitely inspiration because I say that, everybody says Cato. It's not a Cato as a building. It's the people. It's Absolutely. The counselors. It's the ones that love you. Like, I mean, Cement that said, hey, I'm about to send somebody to pick you up. Like you're getting your ass up here. Like you're not dying. Like, people like that, like, that just say, hey, we need to help. We want to help you. And, me now that I work at Cato, and matter of fact, I'll be there 3 years next month. It's giving back, yeah, I'm getting paid for it, but I love to do it, and that's what they were getting paid for it, but they love to help me. I got to share this little God story. So when I came back, the first time I was like, my first sobriety, everybody would ask me like, are you too, somebody come up to me and they said, you're too heavenly good that you're no earthly good. And I said, oh, okay, great. I took it as a compliment. I was like, thanks, like I love it, And so when I relapsed and I came back, I kind of understood what they said, but when I came back, I was pissed. Oh, I was so pissed at God. I was like, you could have stopped me, like, this is your fault. Like, I did this. Oh, I was hot. So, my beautiful counselor, Jill, you have to write these letters and you have to tell your drugs goodbye and you have to do all your stories and you have to I said, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write God a letter. I'm going to write God a letter and I'm going to tell him, So I did. So I wrote me a Dear God letter. I put it in an envelope. I put Jesus Christ in your heart 00. I put a stamp on it. I put Cato, return to Carin. Like I put everything. Like I went. So I'm going up there in Cement and I can't remember her name. It was Cement and somebody else. Anyway, so when I'm going up the hall, anyway, they said, well, baby, where are you going? I said, oh, I'm going to mail with some mail. And I just laughed and just went on and dropped it in the box. And anyway, so I got a little upset. So I left a little early, just a little bit. But Jill had been fighting for me anyway, because I'm going to say my insurance didn't want to pay for me because I had 5 years sober. So they said I knew what I should be doing. I was like, no. And so, and I remember, and somebody else told me too, that Jill had literally went in there and said, if we're sending her out of here, y'all might as well just go on and buy her some dope, get her some rigs, and give her a 6-pack of beer. Because she's going right back. Like she's going back. And I would have. That's exactly because I was already like, y'all are kicking me out. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? I'm homeless. I have no place to go. Like I am homeless. When I first came in the rooms at Alcoholic Anonymous, I literally would look around and I would hear people's story and I said, I'm not that bad. Oh, I didn't do that. Oh, I would judge like, oh, no. I didn't lose shit. I just lost my freedom. But when I came back in and so broken the second time, I had lost everything. And I remember my Chris Fort, and I have to bring Chris Fort up because that's love me some Chris Fort. But Chris Fort said, hey, y'all kind of be soft with Carin because she's really beating herself up. I remember everybody would come in there, they were on the panel. That's who I got sober with in 2012. I'm over there wanting to like climb underneath the chair, like, oh my God, here I am back in here. And it was hard. And I had one of the techs come to me and they were talking. It was during Mardi Gras. And she said that she had drank and she had 15 years sober. And I was like, oh my God, who do you think you are? You only had 5 years. She had 15. So it was kind of like, oh yeah, okay, I don't feel that bad. You had 15, you know? And it was like, and so when they came in, I was like, hey, pick me. I'll get that sobriety chip, that first one, you know, the desire. I want the desire chip, you know, and I did. And it was cool. And so anyway, so yeah.
So isn't it funny too that the first place I ever really saw a lot of the grace and the things in action was in AA and in treatment centers and places like that, because you talk about coming back in and you're embarrassed, head hanging, and nobody ever, I never see people go, oh man, you're in here again. Yeah. What are you doing? You know, right. You just go, hey man, come on in. It's never a judgment, and it's you just don't have to hold your head in recovery. You know, we don't walk around with our head held down and tail between our legs. And I think it's just a beautiful way of, and it's because we've all been there and we all understand, you know, but I didn't, you know, that was a huge thing for me to see early on in sobriety, was seeing people come back in. And Mike and I were sitting at the club one day, and a lady came in, and she had gotten maybe 6 months or something, was doing really good. It was early before the meeting, not a lot of people there. She walks in, she's just bawling, crying, just walks in, tears running down her face. And I'm like, what happened? She get in a car wreck or something? I didn't know what happened, you know?
Right.
She had a slip, and she's so down on herself and all that. And Mike just never, his expression never changed. And she's like, I'm so sorry. Like, she's apologizing to us.
Right.
And she goes, I know everyone's going to be mad at me. And Mike goes, that's like getting mad at a fish because he swims in water. Like, nobody's mad. Yeah. And that lady's doing really good now. But that was a critical moment. And to watch Mike, it was calm, and hey, sit back down. Here's a chair, you know, and we'll just start over. So, I've always loved that about this program.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. Well, because we've all been there. I mean,
right.
like, and we know that like we want to pack on more shame. Like, no, dust
right.
yourself off, get on up here and do it again.
But a lot of people don't, like, you know, and I can say now I can relate to the people that, you know, because there's a lot of people that hadn't, they got sober and they stayed sober. And then there's some people like us that have the story like, that wasn't my story. But I did, when I was out the 2 years, I did keep hearing everybody, all the things I have learned, it's going to be 10 times worse, da, da, da. Like, all of it was coming true. And I was like, they were in my head even the whole time. So I knew where to go back to. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, and the guilt and shame finally, when I wrote the letter and I did the letter, so I got to leave a little bit early. And so I was informed that I could go to Sabine Parish. I wasn't allowed to talk to nobody. I was to come right back to Shreveport. They were going to do an emergency meeting. I told them I was not going back to Oakwood. I love me some Oakwood, but I'd done that for a year, that I was going to do something different. And so they said, so my sponsor and me talked about it and decided we would do Oxford. So I did Oxford. I got accepted into Oxford. So when I was leaving, one of the techs come running out and they said, hey, you got mail. I'm not supposed to do this. This is breaking policies, but I got to give you your mail. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I put it in my purse and I said, Coy was probably your daddy, you know, because he's out there doing his thing still. And so anyway, so when we got home that night, I said, Coy, go get that letter. I said, let me see what your daddy had to say. And so she went and got the letter. And when I opened up the letter, it said, dear child of mine. Start crying. Oh. Anyway, and it said, I want you to throw it as far as the east to the west. I want you to forgive yourself. I have forgiven you, and just dust it off and let's keep going. And at the bottom it said, love God. And I was like, oh my. And so I'm in tears going, what? So that was kind of like my burning bush to say, wow. It was like it was released. It was like I didn't have no more guilt. This is part of my story. I'm going to dust it off and I'm going to do it. So that was just exactly what I needed to hear to let it go. You know,
yeah.
And this is how that program works, because for me, God's higher power, you know, he uses all kind of people to come and to help us and to move us along, because some people get stuck in some things and then he'll say, well, I need you to go over here and talk, and I need you to do this, and I need you to confident, and because we've been there.
And it's funny too, like as I listened to your story, you had a judge that helped you a lot.
Oh, yes.
And he was tough as hell. But then you had Chris Fort saying, hey, let's go easy on her. Isn't that beautiful how people, Jill's real great at,
oh yeah,
she can put her foot in your butt if you need that, but she can also pat you on the back.
A couple times I had to go to the office, but a couple.
That's what it takes in here, is a group of people to get us to that point. We just don't do it by ourselves. And when you hear we do recover, it is because it's man, there's so many people beside me, I should say, not behind me, that it has taken to get me to this point, and it's been all kinds of different personalities and different things like that.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, different ways of pushing me along as things went, so.
Well, that letter, what a cool, little miracle that was.
Yes, and girls, so it's actually hanging on my wall in my office at CADA. I have it framed.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think they painted, like, somebody drew us all in the break room when we was there. They didn't draw you, Jill. But they drawed all the girls. And I was like, oh God. Yeah, so I just like framed a bunch of stuff that, I can look back and say, I even got a picture from Jill that somebody drew us and say, hey, look, this is where I used to be that I'm not no more. And that's the cool part, because I do work at CADA now. I just celebrated 5 years in February. I got really, really nervous around my 5 years and really stayed in contact with my sponsor, because, you hear people say, oh, well, you get this and that. And I did not want, I said, I am not going to be a chronic relapser. I will stay sober. And so I just had to buckle up because, I got into fear there, and I was like, oh, no, he's getting, and when I made it that 5, I was like, yeah. Did it. I made it. It's 5, and now it's time just to rock on with it, So, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about now.
So let's, like I said, I work at CADA, actually. And so I have my 2 youngest kids. My 2 older ones are grown. I have another grandkid, a little girl. Her name's Hazley. She's so beautiful. She is. She's a little mini me. She is so pretty. And then my grandson, Clay, he's in my life. And then, and so I've restored all the relationships, and that's cool. And so they don't look at mama. But Cooley was telling me the other day, she's 14. And so she was like, Mom, I really don't remember you like that. And that's a good thing. My oldest 2 is the ones I don't, thank God, yeah. But she doesn't, because I've actually, I've skipped a couple years, but I've actually been sober almost, so like 10 years of her life I've been sober. And that's the cool part, is she don't remember mom like that. Neither does my son, my 16-year-old. He really don't remember mom. Now the other 2, they can tell you all the war stories.
Yeah.
Like my oldest daughter, she said, I got mama issues. And I looked at her and said, excuse me? I said, okay, well, mama's here now. And she said, no, I really do. I said, okay, great. We'll talk about that later. And so, and so I've gotten married here lately. Woohoo.
Yes. Congratulations.
And so yes, I got married. So my dad passed away in April. And so in May, it was kind of a thing, like just, we'd been together so many years and kind of just wanted to get things right. Cause I said, I really don't have a lot of sin in my life. No, I'm not perfect. I cuss, my thoughts sometimes are crazy, but and so anyway, so he come home and he asked, and I was like, nah, I'm not, no, I don't want to do this. And so he come home again. And he said, I'm not asking you again. And I was like, oh, are you butthurt? Like you're pouting? And so anyway, so it was pretty cool. I said, are you serious? And he said, yeah, I want to. And I was like, all right, like, are you really? And so I called my sponsor. I was like, this is, I had to get everybody's blessings. And so it's pretty cool. He's in recovery too. And so, that was a big thing, is us both in recovery, but it's just like, I never know what I'm going to do tomorrow, because it's just for today. I know today when I lay my head down, I stayed another day sober. Yeah. I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, and that's the same with him. So we just push it forward. So it's kind of like, so it's kind of cool, because he does know like my downs, or whatever. And say, I think you need, my kids even look at me and say, I think you need to call your sponsor. I'm like, are you serious? And they're like, yeah, you need to call her. And so that's pretty cool that they could even catch my behaviors for saying, hey, Mama's kind of cutting up. She might want to, change that attitude, and reach out. And that's the cool part about it. Cause like I said, my kids have been with her ever since 2012, and they just, so it's just, I wouldn't change this life for any other life. Sure. And that's just it. Like any day that I have that's a bad day, and I've been through some storms. I've lost my daddy in April. My mom's in the hospital, like right now, like not doing really, really good. She has a defibrillator that can't get it stable. Her oxygen's to 70. She's 82 years old. There's always some kind of trials and tribulations, but it's okay because I can get through it sober. And that's the cool part, is that even with mom, it's like I had to set up all this home health stuff and all this, to go take care of her. And I got to do it. I was sober. Yes. I got to do it. And that's the cool part. And then, she even looked at me and said, I've lived a good life. I have lived a wonderful life, and I've got to see my daughter get sober. I was like, oh, Mom, you're not going nowhere. I cannot lose 2 parents in 1 year. You're going to be here for a little. No. She said, don't say that. But anyway, but she's lived a good life, and I know she has. And, and so anyway, so yeah. But like I said, we just keep struggling. I love the promises. That is one of my favorite readings, because that is so true. The promises. And they do. They do.
Continue. They do. I don't know if I'm sure a lot of people felt like I did. I used to cry when they would read those every day at the meeting in treatment because I knew for a fact they would never happen in my life. And it was like, why are you even saying this? It's a bunch of bullshit.
Right.
And like every single one of them have come true. And I'm like, how did they know?
Right. Yes.
How did they know that?
Yes. And Jill, you just what was yours? We just celebrated you too.
14.
Yeah,
14
yeah.
years,
And it was so sweet because I got to meet her little mom, and so they literally had us all crying like when her mom like spoke, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like, this is so sweet. Yeah, because I mean, she got to speak in front of the crowd, and she's not one of us, but anyway, it was
Actually,
just
I
awesome.
remember that now.
That might have been where I seen you. Yes, because we was all there at the front. Her whole pack was just looking at her like just right there.
That's right.
Yeah. So it was super sweet to see that, and I actually today to be grateful that I can give back, and some of my amends is just being there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Just being there.
Well, and doing, what you do. And I have loved every job I've had in recovery. Now, my first job in recovery, I was kind of all over the place.
I still am.
Because I like really badly because I was newly sober, and God bless, I was working on a lot of stuff at that point. So I was a lot irritable, restless, and discontented. I have enjoyed. My favorite part is just helping people.
Right.
That's all I want to do for the rest of my life.
I remember when I came back, so I said, I want to go back into the office field. And I remember my sponsor looking at me and said, no, we're not. And so the girls said, we're about to kick you out. So I got to clean my sponsor's house a couple times. They said, if you don't get a job, we're about to kick you out. And I was like, oh my God, so my second charge was really huge. Like I'm talking over 30 something grams we got busted with. It was not mine. I didn't even know it was in the car because, I hid mine. I wouldn't bring mine nowhere with me because I was scared somebody would steal it. So I would keep mine at my mom's. Yeah, I had mine at my mom's, but this person had it on it. So when you go to jail for all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember it was during COVID, and I got into a bad depression, and I never really dealt with depression. And so I kept telling Monica something's not right with me. I think I need. We're not just going to take a pill. I said no. She said, I think we need to go. Finally, she said, I think we need to go see somebody, a psychiatrist. I said that'd be perfect. I'm down. I'm ready. And so I remember telling God, like, I'm not feeling you. Like, I'm just not feeling you. Like, I need to feel you. Like, I feel like I need to feel you. And that day my phone rang, and I seen it was my lawyer, which was T-Dell. He's the bomb.com. And so I was like, I don't want to answer this phone. I'm just looking at it like it's heavy. We're about to have court. The person that was riding with me, it's just crazy. So I answered the phone, and he said, hey, guess what? I said, I got court next month, at the beginning of the month. He said, no. I said, what? He said, your charges were dropped. And I said,
oh,
what?
wow.
I was like, are you serious? I said, oh my God, I just prayed about this. I said, let me call my mom. I said, oh, are you serious? And he said, yeah. I said, what happened? And he said, they probably read the damn dockets for once, because it wasn't mine, and so anyway, but you still catch a charge. But the persons that it belonged to, they had their driver's license in it. So, I mean, tell me, it was not.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was not mine, So, I mean, proof it wasn't. Like
what?
Yeah. So anyway,
miracles.
Yes,
that's all I'm hearing is a bunch of miracles.
Right. And I want to just share this, like when I first so I got to go to work at Chili's, and I went in there and I told this guy, I said, look here. I said, I might go to jail. I'm homeless. I'm living in this Oxford house over here. If I don't get a job, they're about to kick me out. I don't have nowhere to go. Please. And he said, well, have you ever waited tables? And I'm thinking, yeah, years and years ago. And it was like, ring the bell, orders up, And so I said, please, man, like, I need a job. I said, I'm in recovery, like, for drugs and alcohol. He said, I'm going to give you a shot. His name was DeVille. Loved him. He said, I'm going to give you, and he just laughed like, are you serious right now? I said, I'm serious. Like, I am so dead serious. He said, I'm going to give you a shot. I said, okay. So anyway, when I went in, I actually was 32 server, didn't know nothing. Everything was on a machine. So anyway, he was one of my biggest cheerleaders. The whole Chili's was. Even the corporate had come in, and he was big. So when I celebrated they wouldn't let me work in the bar though. It's just on the side, they wouldn't. And so when the corporate had come in, so everybody's telling me like, congratulations, and cheering me on. And so corporate said, what's going on? So I said, I'll show you you. And they're like, so the GM's looking like, she's not about to tell him that she's in recovery, is she? And so I went and showed him the picture. I said, I got a year sober. And he jumped up and he hugs me and he said, oh my God, give me. And so all the waiters are kind of looking like, what is going on? Why is she hugging corporate, you know? And he said, I got 15 years. We're friends with Bill W2. I was like, oh. So it was just, yeah, it was so freaking cool. And I was like, what? I said, oh my God, you know Bill and Bob? He said, yeah. I said, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So it was just really, really awesome. But I do remember you talking about working in a bar, and we were speaking about my brother earlier. I had to serve a margarita one time. And so anyway, so when I was serving it, you know, yeah, that's what I tell you. I don't think I could do it. But it like, I'm walking in, and so it like spills out and it hits my hand. And so I'm putting the cup down. And so automatically I'm going to turn around, and I could hear that voice say, lick it, lick it, lick it.
I was just thinking that. I was
like, a drink. You know?
No, I was like, lick it, lick
yeah,
it.
It wanted me to lick my hand, you know, and that's the voice telling me, lick your hand, lick your hand. I'm like, holy shit. And so I'm running over there, I'm washing my hands real fast, and I call my sponsor. I was like, oh my God, who does this? She said, an alcoholic. And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, you know, but that's literally wanting to lick. I'm like, what would that have done? But anyway, it probably would have got me started.
Yeah, trigger central. You tasted that salt and been like,
yeah, girl. And it was a blue one too. I was like, oh yeah.
When that reminded me of the Chili's, when I got out of treatment, I had been in the same business for quite a while, but got out of treatment, had to start all over, just moved here, and I needed a job, had kids, had all that stuff. And I just prayed about it. I was like, I'm just going to go make the effort. I'm going to do whatever. So I went into a place, and it was the end of the season. It was August. They were winding up for the year in the business I'm in, and went in with a resume that I made in rehab, the first resume I'd ever made in my life. And so the lady at the desk goes, we're not hiring. It's the end of the season. You know, I'll keep it on file, but we've already let people go and blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, thank you. And this guy walks by, and he says, I got a minute. I'll talk to you. What was the general manager? And so we walked in his office and sat down, and he looked at the little resume, and I know he was reading it going, why is this dude in here? Because I'd been around a while, you know? And he said, man, I'm at the end of the season. I said, before you go any further, I said, let's make a deal. You give me a week on a truck. Just put me on a truck. Don't care. Whatever job you got.
Right.
And I said, at the end of the week, you don't owe me a dime. If I don't do what you need me to do, I'll walk off on my way. You don't owe me a penny. If not, keep me. And he said, I'm not going to do that. I would never let anybody work for free. And I said, I need a job. And he said, all right. And he called somebody else in there, and we talked and ended up working there and kind of got back going. But it was that desperation of, I'll work for nothing.
Yeah.
You know?
I just need to work. Like, yeah.
I'll show you what I can do. And then you go from there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, God just does that kind of stuff for us when we're humble enough to.
Yeah. My first job, I was volunteering.
I really,
I'm the house manager in Rayville, but I mean, they were like, get out of the house and you go volunteer at the treatment center. So I was like emptying trash cans and like, can I please clean your desk?
That's cool.
It's got to start, you know, it's got to start somewhere.
Right.
She was like, you need to do something.
Needless to say, I still got evicted from that house. Some girls kicked me out fast. But when I moved in, it was a sick house. And so when I came back, everybody's like, oh my God, Karen's back in Shreveport. So all these people start stopping by and seeing me, all these old timers. And so these girls were just living there. None of them had a sponsor. None of them was going to meetings. They were just like,
oh gosh.
Yeah, it was great. Anyway, so that night I was like, I got a job. And they were like, so we were there in the house meeting, and they said, oh, well, I vote Karen out for disruption of the house. And I'm looking, going, what?
They can do that?
Yeah, girl. And everybody raised their hand. I was like, what? I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do?
That's horrible.
I just got a job and y'all are kicking me out. So I called my friend that was in recovery. I said, look, I ain't got no car. Like, I had nothing, you know, like I need to ride. Like, they tell me they got 15 minutes. They're calling the laws. Like, I don't need no laws. Like, I'm already in enough trouble. And she said, well, she was in a sober, like, well, we'll bring you over here. And so everybody kept saying, you can't stay with your friend. Like, y'all can't live together. Needless to say, that was a total. Anyway, she decided, she said, hey, I'm moving out of this house before me and you get into it. I'm going to another auction house. So they split us up. So anyway, and then I stayed there until I got through. I had to stay for 6 months. At the 5th month, I was ready to go. I done got an apartment, hadn't told my sponsor about it because I got approved for an apartment. I was so proud. I was like, what? And so anyway, so I called her. I said, hey, I got an apartment. I think I'm going to move out. And she said, no, that's not what we said. I said, what? I said, how am I going to pay an apartment in Oxford? She said, you better pray to God and you'll make a way. And I did it for the next month. I stayed in Oxford. But on that 6th on that last of that 6 months, that last day I had everything at the front door waiting. I was like,
Ready to roll.
deuces.
Only so much you can take of that stuff. you know.
Yeah.
Well, Carin, thank you for stopping by today.
Thank y'all for
that's
having
really
me.
good. Really
yes,
good.
always
So-
a pleasure.
Yeah, I
love
love
you so much.
you know I love you
and,
too,
and
Jill.
thank you so much.
You are welcome. This is an honor. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.